You've been very busy, Michael Chammas, so I opened up the Sydney Morning Herald this morning and there you are with the story. And you've mentioned it before as kind of cooking and brewing along that the NRL and the ARL Commission will look at the structure of the competition, including representative footy, and you've talked about the conference. So we're looking at the aim being 20 teams and then perhaps we're looking at 4 conferences of 5.
Yeah, well, the NRL, that's their goal. And Peter Valand is on the record saying the outcome that they are searching for, that's the right number, is 20 teams. And how does that work? They're at the moment in the process of speaking to broadcasters around the next deal. And that's the opportunity now for the game to sit down and map out what it looks like. Because I think, I spoke to Wayne Bennett about it and other people in the game. The current system, especially around Origin, it needs some fine-tuning. The disadvantages of the clubs, the amount of time the Origin period goes for, there's got to be a better system. And I sat down throughout the week, spoke to a lot of people and mapped out what it could look like. And one of the things that the NRL are considering are conferences. Now, there's no specifics around how they plan for that to work, but one model that I came up with was to split the competition into 4 conferences made up of 5. And then you play everyone once, which is 19 teams, and you play your conference twice. So that's the 23 games, one less than what it is right now. And a lot of the feedback I got was, it's not fair because the Sydney teams will all play each other and have to travel much. Well, to be honest, it's not too much dissimilar to what it is right now. The Sydney teams, the NRL skews the draw so that the Roosters do play the Dragons twice or the Bulldogs play the Eels twice. It's pretty similar, and the amount of travel that the other teams that are out of state do now will be similar to what it is in this model. So that there is no real change or advantage to what it is. The hard part was splitting the conferences in Sydney and determining who is what, because originally I had Bulldogs, Dragons, Tigers, Eels, Panthers in one. I felt like they were the Western. I know the Dragons aren't Western Sydney, but they belonged in one pool. But one of the clubs made a point. Well, you need to have split the big clubs. And in my mind, you might disagree. There's the big 6 in Sydney. It's the Eels, the Panthers, Eels, Bulldogs, Tigers, Dragons, Roosters, Rabbits. No disrespect, Wado, to the Sharkies, to Manly or to Penrith, but
how have you kept Penrith out of that? Out of the big 6?
Do you think Penrith's as big as a football club, as a fan base and an over? I'm not talking performance. I'm talking about as a football club with a fan base and I think Parramatta is well ahead of Penrith.
Oh, I think they used to be.
Yeah,
but over the last probably 4 or 5 years, it's definitely taken over out there.
Well, bigger catchment area as well. Their junior league is the biggest in the competition.
Yeah, the junior league is definitely big. They're in the Western Sydney Conference right?
Yeah.
Interesting one because Perth is also in that conference.
Yeah,
as we've got at the moment.
It is West.
There's no more West than Perth.
It's pretty West.
But they got a Sydney fan base, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like if you had St George, Illawarra, Roosters, Rabbits in one conference, then you put Manly and Cronulla in the other. And then where do you put Perth? Newcastle fans are up in arms thinking they should be in one of these conferences, but I think with the Sydney fans with Perth, they go into one of those conferences. And then what I don't like, and Wayne Bennett has been a big advocate for splitting the comp into 2 different conferences, 10 teams, having a Sydney final and an out of Sydney final and meeting. And I don't like the idea of never having a Roosters Rabbits grand final or a Broncos Cowboys grand final. To me, the pinnacle should be open to everyone, and you get a situation where you don't have the best 2 teams in the comp. So the only way the conference matters in the system that I put in the Herald today is if you win your conference, you're the highest person in that conference, then you get into the top 4. You're in the top 4 seed in the finals. And then the next 6 best ranked go in. Week 1 of the finals, the top 6 are off. 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9 to get into the top 8.
How do you rank the top 4?
High. So right now,
for and against?
No, points on the ladder.
Yeah, but then if they've all got the same amount of points,
well, then it comes to for and against.
That's what I mean. Like, how do you become first and how do you become fourth? Yeah.
So as it stands now, Canberra would be top of their group, the Bulldogs would be top of their group, the Broncos would be top of their group, and I think the Sharks would be top of the other group. So,
yeah, but then because the Sharks haven't had as many wins as say Canberra Raiders, when they get ranked across into the finals, they'd be ranked 4.
Yeah.
Fourth.
I think it's only a matter of time really before we shift to something like this in terms of catering for the new teams, trying to shorten that season. How do we do that most effectively? And I like the work you've done here, Shemmy, I could see you at home in your computer with your GM head on. This is a dream for you.
A lot of work on me.
Yeah, it was a lot of work,
It
mate.
wasn't even a work project, but he would have enjoyed doing it. Just sitting at home.
And I
on
did
his
the
own.
graphics,
You've
by the
also-
way.
It's good graphic. But the Knights, you've got the Knights. Well, what are they? They're in the Southern Conference.
We can call it what you call it, the regional conference if you want, but I went with Southern, yeah.
And they got the Warriors, the Raiders, the Storm, and the potentially the second New Zealand.
Yeah, so that's
team.
what you've added in terms of getting us up to 20.
20.
You've added a
As
second,
a second
team for
New Zealand team. But
yeah.
this conference still works if you add a second Queensland team. So those 5 Queensland teams are together, and you just move PNG into the that regional
Regional team,
conference. Yeah. So
Not bad for a rough draft.
yeah, well, I just
But
think
what
the
sort of reaction
conversation-
have you had from those you've approached?
I spoke to Peter Volandis, spoke to a number of clubs, Wayne Bennett. There's a view that the conference system works. The clubs think they can maximise revenue if they have locked in home and away fixtures against their rivals. That works. The main conversation is what's the ideal season length?
Yeah.
And the clubs are saying if you go to 19, which I think is the right number, like I've got 23 right in the paper today, but 19 to me is the right model. But you're not going to convince broadcasters to go down 4 games. You're not going to convince clubs they've only got 9 home games a year instead of the 12 they've got now because they'll lose money.
Yeah, because the
sell-
broadcasters aren't going to, obviously, if they're
No.
dropping games, they're not going to put in the money that
No.
people are expecting them to put in, which is fair enough.
Well, players going to take a pay cut.
Yeah,
No.
that's what, yeah.
Well, then
yeah.
what's going to suffer then is still the international game. How do we squeeze the most out of that?
Well, there's one less round there. And I think what I've proposed is a 5 nations at the end of the year. It's got to be like they've 6 nations in rugby. England, Australia, Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand together every year. You play 5 games. One team has a bye every week. Highest on the ladder wins the 5 nations. You play it here twice, and then go once to England. Then you got the World Cup the following year.
You've also truncated the state of origin where there'd be a game on a Wednesday, then 10 days later on a Sunday, and then 10 days later on a Wednesday.
Well, these guys have played Origin, so you tell me. But from an outsider looking in, I think the series is too long. It's 53 days from the teams going into camp to the players leaving camp after Game 3. The amount of travel involved, in and out of planes, whatnot, and also the interruption to the clubs. The clubs pay the players handsomely for their services, and they're getting injured, they're getting mentally fatigued. Wayne Bennett actually said they should have went back to back in 2010 and 11 at the Dragons. But Origin killed us because they had 9 players involved. He said the physical toll of it, the mental toll, it's such a long period of time. In this situation that I've posed here, you're done and dusted in 28 days. You go into camp and you don't leave. You have split rounds, you have midweek games, and every team is without an Origin player for 1 game. I think that's fair. I think if the clubs are only disadvantaged once, they can cope with it. And then the players are in Origin as a build-up. They're in camp the whole time, and the intensity is there for everyone.
Would you not have a bigger squad butt if you have to stay in camp? So you wouldn't be picking 20 players. You'd be picking 24 players to cover for injuries.
Yeah, you'd be picking 17, and then you would be picking additional players to come in based on the NRL draw. So if they're not playing that week, then you bring in the players from the 10 teams that are available.